Who's sneaking around in here, Charles? Whatever are you looking for? I'm looking for hope.
We will stand together, number one, the chosen ones. We are one, we will fight forever. We are one and we won't die
young. Alright, moment of truth here. I am not a fan of the Children of Gaia. They are my least favorite tribe, and I fully admit it's due to bias. I like werewolves. I hate hippies. In my book, combining those two is a terrible idea. Oh, but Brett, why do you hate the hippies? Haven't you seen that Bill Hicks bit on drugs and rock and roll? Yes, I have, and like everything else that great man did, it's a work of genius.
Drugs have done good things for us. If you don't believe they have, do me a favor, take all your albums, tapes, CDs, and burn them. Because you know what? The musicians who made that great music that has enhanced your lives throughout the years are real fucking high. Okay.
You really want to know why I despise hippies? They're smelly, they're filthy, they're parasites, they're degenerates, they're part of the reason why my home state is full of SJWs and hipsters.
Fuck you, piece of shit!
In fact, it's a personal policy that I gun down any hippies that set foot on my property.
You can't own property, man.
I can, but that's because I'm not a penniless hippie.
So you can bet that I'm also not a fan of their leftist politics. Of course, being an alt-right Nazi, allegedly, I'm obligated to hate anything to the left of George Lincoln Rockwell. And now that that's out of my system, I promise I will make no more Nazi or 1488 jokes. At least until I get to the Get of Fenris. But if you guys have been with this series from at least the Black Fury episode, then it's no secret to you that I'm not a fan of the Black Furies either, and yet I managed to demonstrate that I can find ways to make a good Fury character. So you can damn well bet I can do the same with the Children of Gaia. Just watch me. The legend of how the Children of Gaia began starts when the Earth was young. The Garou had begun dividing themselves into tribes and making war with one another. It pained Gaia to watch her children kill each other for what seemed like no reason. But then Gaia came upon 5 dead werewolf pups in a cairn. In her grief, she breathed life back into them, and from there came the first Children of Gaia pack. Just as their mother had healed them and brought them back from the dead, they would venture out into the world to heal it and bring it peace. Now, being the resident pacifists, you would think the children might have been opposed to the Impergium, but in fact, they were and weren't. It wasn't the idea they were opposed to so much as the methods employed. The wanton murder the other tribes engaged in was ultimately just feeding the worm more and more. Methods the children proposed were more subtle and indirect, such as eating more of the humans' food to starve them to encourage less breeding, or spreading disease to kill off more humans, but you know, non-violently. The children claimed that one of their own, a hermaphrodite named Garou, brought the end of the Impergium with an impassioned speech about peace and allowing some humans to increase their numbers, and then she was murdered by Red Talons, supposedly. The War of Rage is one of the great shames of the Children of Gaia, as they were used by pawns by both the Garou and other Pharaoh. Sometimes Pharaoh would arrive at a child cairn under the pretense of a peace talk, but in reality another Garou tribe was using it as a trap. Sometimes Pharaoh would attack unsuspecting children as revenge for the death of their kinsmen, and sometimes even the children got wrapped up in the killing for something as simple as revenge. But in all honesty, the whole affair was one big bloody mess and nobody got out with their hands clean, not even the children. The children would involve themselves in ancient Sumeria when a series of wars broke out over control of a local river between the cities of Umma and Lagash. These wars lasted about 3 or 4 generations until King Il of Zabam would conquer both cities and declare that Lagash would own the river, but Umma was free to use it. Of course, this did not sit well with the king of Lagash, who would institute tax after tax in order to raise capital for another war. The children had spent years fighting for Lagash, but the taxes were the final straw, so they rose up and overthrew the king and established Urukagina, the reformer, who was kin to the children. Sadly, the good times did not last long, as Zagesi, the king of Umma, came to wage war against Lagash, who at the time was woefully unprepared. This loss would end up teaching the children a lesson they never forgot. While peace is something to strive for, children are still Garou and must be ready to fight. In ancient Greece, the children got to sit in on the art and philosophy of the day, and the Greeks were quite receptive to their ideas. They did so well it was practically their golden age, or rather, would have been had it not been for the Black Furies who had already laid claim to Greece as their territory. The children claimed Ctesias of Cnidus, the Greek physician and author of Persica, as one of their own, and he can sometimes be seen at their moots in spirit form to this day. The days of the Roman Empire were not good days to be a child. Rome's militarism and expansionism kept everyone, human or werewolf, under their boot. Got even worse when a satirist named Petronius unwittingly broke the veil with a little thing called Satyricon and got humanity fearing werewolves again. There was a silver lining to all of this, though. The children actually found some camaraderie with the early Christians with their message of tolerance and forgiveness. You might think in the Dark Ages the children would lay low, and you would be correct. During the Dark Ages, the Fianna, Geta Fenris, Silver Fangs, and Red Talons dominated and waged war throughout Europe. However, one child named Tree of Battles would come to distinguish himself amongst his tribesmen. Tree of Battles gained quite a bit of clout amongst the Silver Fangs for his vast knowledge of lore, both Garou and spirit. He served as a herald of battle and tourneys, but what made him unique was in how he used his position. Taking inspiration from St. Francis of Assisi, he would recount tales of nobility and heroism. He would speak of brave knights that fought with honor, knights that were God-fearing men. In telling these tales, he hoped to inspire the Garou to follow their better angels. During the chaos of the English Civil War, a child kin named Gerard Winstanley and Galliard Will Everard would take 20 Garou and kinfolk to St. George's Hill in Surrey. There they would establish a colony where they would shield people fleeing the war, but also to live more in harmony with nature. Of course, over time, more colonies would be built and landlords would take notice. They sent men to raise the colonies, but another child Galliard named Brightness Falls convinced the Garou living there to not rage so that the people would be spared. Now, because they didn't fight back, the colonies did get broken up eventually, and Winstanley left to become a Quaker, while Everard and Brightness Falls stayed behind to build new ones, but they stuck to their pacifist ways. In 1754, the children would call an Almoot in Switzerland. This Almoot was centered around the discussion of ideas and philosophies taking shape during the Enlightenment. Things like physiocracy, democracy, the free market. The children were hoping to build upon these ideas to create a freer and more open society. The result of this Almoot would be what the children referred to as the law of nature of Cord, which has helped shape much of their modern philosophy around freedom and rule of nature. Hell, during the early days of the framing of the U.S. Constitution, a child named Mary McGinnis would work as a cleaning lady in Philadelphia. There she would listen to James Madison as he would gather his notes and even offered some of her own ideas that made it into the Constitution. When America began expanding westward, just as whites and natives fought over land, so too did the Garou. Fighting broke out between Garou and the European tribes, mainly the Fianna and Geta Fenris and the Native American tribes. Some children, instead of being neutral, ended up picking sides, while others tried to broker for peace with varying degrees of success. But they did manage to eke out one success. A great worm bane known as the Storm Eater managed to break free of its prison and threaten the American West, and it took the combined efforts of all 13 tribes to put it back in its prison. It, of course, would go without saying that the children were instrumental in making this alliance happen. It also goes without saying that during the World Wars, the worst of human nature got unleashed. Now, the children are pacifists, but they won't shrug from a fight if there's no option. And in both World Wars, everyone got hit. The sheer scale of the carnage gave the children some perspective on how much their mission to promote peace was needed. The children that exited those wars came back with more determination and galvanized resolve than ever before in their mission to promote peace among the Garou. When the 1960s came and brought all its sex, drugs, and rock and roll with it, the children of Gaia found themselves drawn to the hippie counterculture that formed during that time. Whether it was participating in anti-war protests about America's involvement in Vietnam, civil rights for minorities, women's rights to choose, drug legalization, I think you guys get the idea enough. Their only regret from this time period is getting complacent and not capitalizing on their success. Now in the children, things aren't looking so good these days. There's talk of abolishing the tribal camps, there's more diseases spreading at a rate they're having trouble keeping up with and being able to heal. There's rogue nukes out there just waiting to get used by some madman, and the land's being developed and urbanized. So younger children are starting to think that maybe the time for peace is over. Now is the time for action. The children are the loosest organized of the tribes, but don't take that to mean that they don't have a hierarchy. They're just not strict about it. In fact, in stark contrast to the other tribes, children are actually not very aggressive when it comes to enforcing rank. Child elders tend to be more open-minded to the ideas of younger members and are even known to try them on occasion. In child seps, the role of leader is occupied by two individuals, the voice of Gaia, which is held by a female member, and the arm of Gaia, which is held by a male member. In keeping with their loose organization, children don't hold global moods, and there's no real global leadership to speak of, though that lack of central leadership in a way can be seen as a strength. Meaning at any given time, you could have multiple child packs carrying out separate operations completely independent of one another. That makes them more unpredictable and difficult to run counter operations against. Even if one child pack falls in the fight, there's more where they came from. Like their totem unicorn, the children are pacifists by philosophy, but if fighting is the only option, even they won't run. They will fight to win, but they will also show their foes mercy when victorious. And in keeping with their peace-loving ways, children will often get involved with human environmental organizations. That hippie that reeks a pot you ran into on an oil pipeline protest run by Greenpeace? Yeah, he was probably a child. Now, while the children of Gaia value peace and mercy, unity is their highest value. Children want the Garou nation to fight as one united front because they know what they can accomplish when they work together with a singular purpose. It's why they've taken upon themselves the role of mediators between packs, seps, and tribes, even if it's ultimately a futile quest. In keeping with that sentiment, the children of Gaia have added their own tenet to the litany: create and pursue peace whenever possible. Yeah, they cling harder to that peace conceit, harder than Guru Larry does with his Peter Molyneux gag. However, if the children do have one big weakness, it's their rage. Unlike other tribes that are alright with letting werewolves baring their teeth and claws and letting their rage loose more frequently, because it's what werewolves do, some children of Gaia are known to hold back their rage so long that when it does get out, even a get offenders is going to tell them to chill the fuck out. Or keep doing it. Most likely the latter. Understand, it's not that the children are opposed to violence, they understand werewolves are going to do what they're going to do. It's that they don't see violence as the first course of action. The children have a saying that violence is a means that too easily becomes an end. And when two werewolves get locked in combat, one will die and the other will be weaker for it, and the worm benefits. Or if an untainted human gets killed by a werewolf, their loved ones suffer and the worm benefits from that suffering too. Rage has its use, but the children are focused on healing the world right now, so that makes rage more of a liability to them. Vast majority of the tribe is Haman, although at this point that should hardly be a surprise. There do exist child lupus, but the lack of wilderness makes them hard to come by. Like the Bone Gnawers, the children of Gaia are one of the few tribes in the Garou nation where menace can find something resembling acceptance. Usually they'll remain in the cairns out of sight, but if they work hard enough, they can gain some respect and standing among their tribesmen. As far as territory goes, the children of Gaia used to dominate in ancient Sumeria, but of course that no longer exists. So the children have spread out and now have territory across the world, mainly North America. I know, big shock. Where tribesmen and kinfolk are concerned, children are one of the multi-ethnic tribes. Now granted, they weren't originally multi-ethnic. Their ancient kinfolk came from the Fertile Crescent, mainly Sumeria. But as the tribe kept expanding further out, eventually they just became too big for one group. So child kinsfolks and tribesmen come in all shapes and colors. Anyone is welcome in the children of Gaia. They don't discriminate. I said at the beginning of the video that I can find a way to make a good Children of Gaia character, and I intend to make good on that promise. So let's look at what the values of the children are. Peace, mercy, and unity. Those are good values, even I can get behind them. Obviously, I would want to eschew the hippie stereotype for reasons that at this point are obvious.
I just got a new grind from Delana's Coffee. Mom, that company is the worst. The CEO lives in a castle and doesn't even pay his employees a living wage.
God, you're annoying. Everything you say is annoying.
So, how to make this work? Well, given that children cast themselves in the roles of healers, I'd make a child character that works in a medical profession, like a doctor, surgeon, or field medic. Field medic would be my character of choice, because it presents the best role-playing opportunities in an action-based campaign. If you want a character who's more spiritual, you can also go with a Wiccan priest or New Age shaman archetype. This route is not my preferred, but given how the children have embedded into these circles, it does make a good case for itself, especially with the gifts and fetishes you can make use of. So, we have archetypes. Now, what kind of characters work for inspiration? One character I would start with is Dr. Julian Bashir from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. He's intelligent, cultured, and committed wholeheartedly to his profession. In the episode Hippocratic Oath, Bashir and Chief O'Brien are held hostage by a hostile alien force that's also addicted to a drug that keeps them alive, and their leader wants Bashir to manufacture a cure. and Bashir goes to great lengths to make one despite them being an aggressor against the Federation on multiple occasions.
You don't know how the other Jem'Hadar will react when they're off the drugs. They may go marauding through the galaxy on their own. At least now, the Dominion keeps them on a short leash.
They're not animals. They're people being used as slaves. And this is their one chance at freedom.
Next up, Vash the Stampede from Trigun. This guy is a pacifist done correctly. He tries to avoid getting into fights as best he can, but if there's no other option, he'll fight whether to defend himself or other people. It's also worth mentioning that he does his best to win his battles without taking any lives.
Strong will can stir the heart, but a will too strong can cut off the heart's visibility. The sorrow of a man bereaved of his family turns into hate, which eventually metamorphoses into the intent to kill. The man's finger reaches for the trigger. Sins change people. Sin begets sin. But I still want to believe. I want to believe in the heart that feels the sin.
And finally, Charles Xavier from X-Men. Anyone with even a cursory knowledge of X-Men knows that Xavier is committed to finding ways that mutants and humans can peacefully coexist. His character is the archetypal child elder as he works to mentor the X-Men in his philosophy.
The world needs dreamers to give it a soul.
And it needs realists to keep it alive.
Professor, Magneto's a lost cause. Why waste time on him?
There were a dozen times Eric could have handed us over to Apocalypse in exchange for his child, but he didn't. And that proves there is hope for even the hardest of hearts.
The children of Gaia are something of a walking contradiction. They're werewolves, born to be Gaia's warriors, and yet they seek peace. Any Garou worth his salt will tell you that the life of a werewolf is anything but peace. It's one of constant struggle and conflict, and one guaranteed to end violently. But maybe it's because the children see something that the rest of the Garou don't. They remember what the Garou could accomplish when they faced the Storm Eater. They were able to imprison one of the most powerful Wormbanes. No single tribe could have done this. It took all of them united as one to accomplish such a feat. And if they were able to do that together, what else could they do? Sure, all the tribes might have their differences, but whether they're Red Talon, Black Fury, Silent Strider, Wendigo, or Shadow Lord, they're all still Garou, all children of Gaia. They know what the Garou are capable of if they pull together. They're not trying to lead. The Garou simply won't follow them. They got no illusions about that. But maybe they can be their conscience. Just nudge them a little in the right direction. Show by example that the Garou can be better. That they can bury these centuries-old grudges and come together. These ideological and religious rifts aren't what Gaia wanted for the Garou, and these divisions are why the Worm and Weaver are winning. If they can get the Garou Nation acting as one, the possibilities of what they can accomplish are limitless. All they need is someone to remind them.